Friends, let me welcome you all to this 17th session of the Rail Enthusiast lecture. We have a very interesting talk by Mr. Atulya Sinha on his experience as a DRM and what goes on in a very interesting part of the world. That is,
you can hear us?
I'm sure he'll be talking about the cattle fair there and various other problems that a DRM faces. Life is, you have to face challenges as well as there are a lot of enjoyable experiences. So I'll now request Deepak to again introduce the speaker and start with the session. JL, all yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Vinu. May I request everyone who's not speaking to please mute themselves. May I please request everyone who's not speaking to mute themselves. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to introduce Atulya Sinha for the second time. He doesn't really require any introduction because he had given a very successful and a highly illuminating talk on his visit to Istanbul and the railways and the city there. Atulya is now the additional general manager of Southeastern Railway and has had a very successful career in the railways, including that of DRM Sonpur. I would like to mention that one of the biggest satisfactions that any teacher or professor can get is when a student is successful and doing well. I had the privilege of having Atulya Sinha as my student when I was a professor at Jamalpur. And today when I see him the way he is, it gives me great satisfaction. So I will not come between you and the talk, which I'm sure will be very good. So over to you, Atulya. Atulya, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, now
I'd like to share my screen.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Vinu, can you give him permission to
share screen? I have already done that.
Okay.
Is it visible now?
Yeah, visible.
Yes.
I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, the screen is visible. Thank you. Very good.
I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, the screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yes, it's visible. It's visible.
So good morning, everybody. And thank you very much, RES, for giving me this opportunity to speak. The title of the presentation is An Inside View of Sonpur, Tangled Memories of a Former DRM. It is my privilege to present this talk, which is the 17th in the series. Now, a bit about myself, although I've already been introduced. If I may add a few things. The highlights of my railway career. I was an apprentice at Jamalpur from 1984 to 1988. I have over 33 years of experience in 6 zonal railways, DLW, RDSO, and RITES. I was DRM Sonpur from 2017 to 19, which is what I'll be talking about today. And presently, I am Additional General Manager in Southeastern Railway, Kolkata. Here you can see a few views of different stages of my railway career. As I said before in my last talk, I'm a railwayman by profession and a rail fan by choice. So these two roles complement and reinforce each other. And that gives me
Excuse me,
a better
may I
opportunity.
once again request everyone who's not speaking to please mute themselves. Everyone is requested to mute themselves except the speaker.
So as I was saying, I'm a railwayman by profession and a rail fan by choice. So this gives me these two roles reinforce each other and help me in my profession as well as my hobby. Now, before I proceed, there are two disclaimers which I would like to share with this group. The first is that there is nothing official about this presentation. This is a purely personal view. And what I'm telling you is what you might have heard and seen if you had been my guest at Sonpur. The other disclaimer is slightly more personal. I'm often asked, where do you belong to? आप कहाँ के रहने वाले हैं? Now this is difficult to answer. And in a moment, I'll tell you why. The easiest answer is, my name is Sinha and I'm not a Bihari. But that is not entirely true because one of my great-grandparents was from Bihar. Therefore, I am fractionally Bihari at least. Now, but let us continue. Why I find it difficult to identify myself with any particular place is that 3 generations of my family have been serving the government of India since the 1930s. Transfers are a way of life for us, for many generations. If you see the map in front of you, you will find some green dots and some red dots. The green dots are the places where I lived in my childhood, where my father was posted. The red dots are the places where I've lived in my own career. Now, these are quite random, but there is a pattern of sorts. I was born at Allahabad on the banks of the sacred river Ganga, and much of my life has been spent on the banks of the Ganga, as you can see from this map. So I can say with some justification, Jahan Ganga bahe, wahan mera ghar. And it's not just this family. I belong to a much bigger family. I belong to the perhaps the biggest family in the world, the railway family, the Indian Railways family. And in that role, wherever the train goes, that is my home. Jahan rail chale, wahan mera ghar. So to summarize, my home is where the Ganga flows. My home is where the train goes. I'm saying this to establish the fact that I have never felt like an outsider wherever I have worked. I have always been a part of the system, and I hope that this will continue. So, coming back to Sonpur, but before we go to Sonpur, I'll take you back to my first posting at Vijayawada. And this section is called the 26-year gap. And in a moment, you'll know why. In the year 1991, I was 26 years old. And that is the first time I heard about Sonpur. Here you can see me sitting down for lunch in my little flat at Vijayawada. The person who told me about Sonpur was a very senior officer who was 26 years senior to me. I'll share his name. He was the late Mr. G.P. Handa. And what he told me was very interesting. He said, just like you maintain diesel locos, in my first posting, I used to maintain steamers. Now, for a moment, I thought he was talking about steam locos, but no, he was talking about steam ships. There was a time when there were steamers running across the river at Swanpoor. And Mr. Handa had started his career there and he used to maintain those steamers. Well, 26 years passed, another 26 years. And now we come to 2017. I was working in Jhansi at that time. And I didn't have much opportunity to think about Sonpur. I did know about Sonpur, of course. It was in the back of my mind. But then there are many places in the back of one's mind. I knew that there was a place called the North Pole. I knew that there was a place called Timbuktu, with apologies to Mr. Jail Singh, who's actually lived there. But there are many places in the world which you know about, but you don't really think that you'll ever go there. Till one day in Jhansi in 2017, and this was no longer a secret, it was in the newspapers. I was posted as DRM at Sonpur. Now, this order came on a Friday afternoon. On Saturday, my team bid me farewell, which you can see in the lower picture. On Sunday, I was pushed onto a train. And as you can see from this picture, that's the first time I realized that being a DRM means having a heavy weight on one's shoulders, literally as well as metaphorically. So on Monday morning, I found myself in Swanpoor. I bid farewell to my predecessor, and by afternoon, I was sitting in this chair. Now, this is a view of this WP 7581, which is preserved in the garden of the DRM office, the building you can see in this corner. And the other views, grand old loco. There are very few WPs which are preserved, and this is one of them. And it's in very, very good condition. This was long before my time. It was preserved long before my time, but I'm glad to have been part of this. This is the view of the rest house where I was staying. This is the building. These are two views of the interior. And this is the view from the window. What is interesting is that when I joined in May, it was absolutely dry. The green portion which you see here was all brown. After 2 months, there was a lot of greenery here, and there was this boats used to sail on this stream, which was dry earth a few weeks ago. So this is something about the surroundings and how I landed in Sonpur. Now something about Sonpur division. The history, this place has a rich history. Everyone knows the Magadh Empire, the capital at Patliputra, which is the modern Patna. Then there was Vaishali, which is a very early example of a democracy, which is located in what is now Sonpur division. North. The Magadh Empire was south of the river Ganga, and Vaishali was north of the Ganga. This is a old coin preserved in the National Museum in Delhi, and this shows the wedding of Chandragupta the first and the princess of Vaishali. So this is interesting because this shows the integration of North and South Bihar, which took place as far back as the 4th century. Then there's Angdesh, which was the kingdom of Karna in the Mahabharata, which is also located in the eastern part of what is Sonpur division now. So now we come to the more recent history, the railway aspects. The present Sonpur has inherited the infrastructure from Bengal and Northwestern Railway, the meter gauge network, which is north of the river, Audhan Tirhut Railway, also a meter gauge network. Then it became part of Northeastern Railway in 1952, headquarters at Musaffarpur, and East Central Railway was established in 1996 with headquarters at Hajipur. Now, let me draw your attention to this quirk of geography. What was Northwestern has become East Central. This is probably because of the frame of reference. Northwestern was with reference to Calcutta, which was the center and the capital of India in those days, and East Central is referring to Delhi. But see how the same place is considered in two entirely different ways. Now this is a very old map, and it comes from a very unexpected source. It comes from a book called My India, written by Jim Corbett in 1952. Swanpoor. Jim Corbett as a big game hunter and pillar of American tigers. And we know Corbett National Park is named after him. So you see the little tiger icon on the left. What most people may not know is that Jim Corbett was an employee and later a contractor of BNWR, Bengal and Northwestern Railway. He was based here at Mokama Ghat, and goods were transshipped across the river by steamer, with this little icon on the right. And he was the person responsible for this transshipment. So he started as a fuel inspector and later he became a transshipment inspector. And he was a contractor of this railway for more than 20 years. So this is a map from his book. And the whatever you see in this map is still recognizable. Now about the geography. This is the area where you have rivers Ganga, Gandak, Budhi, Gandak and Kosi. All four within the division. There's an extreme climate, cold winters, hot summers, heavy rains. The land is very fertile, but it is flood prone. And the soil is good for bricks. There are a lot of brick kilns around, but there is no stone available locally. Here is a view which I shot from the inspection window of my carriage. And this gives you an idea of the kind of terrain. Right. Now to continue with the geography, the railway aspect, the main route runs parallel to the river Ganga. It covers 8 districts of Bihar. And there are neighboring divisions. On the west is Varanasi, NER. On the east is Katihar, NFR. On the south is Malda, Eastern Railway, Danapur, ECR, and surrounding on the north and east is Samastipur, ECR. So as you can see, there are multiple interchange points with the divisions within the railway and within the zone. Divisions, other divisions of the same railway and other zones as well. Now the economy of the region, it is primarily agricultural land, and we have crops like rice, maize, fox nuts, that's makhana, mango, lychee, and vegetables. There's a small industrial cluster in and around Barauni, but otherwise it is mostly agricultural. There is very little originating loading. It is primarily through goods traffic. There is heavy passenger traffic, both short and long distance. The railway is a prominent employer and a source of economic activities. And an interesting thing is that there are more pensioners than employees in Sonpur division. I had around 11,000 employees, but more than 12,000 pensioners. The society, there is low literacy, but there's a strong sense of identity. The sons of the soil and the daughters of the soil have a very strong sense of identity. The languages are Hindi and various dialects like Bhojpuri, and Angika and Maithili, these are also spoken, which are quite different from Hindi. The literary landscape is very rich. There have been many writers and poets from this region. And most people appear to be deeply religious. Now, all these factors affect the working of the railway. There is a volatile socio-political climate. There are agitations, multiple agitations for very many different reasons, very often not even connected with the railway. There are stations named after freedom fighters, politicians, and poets. There are a lot of pilgrimage points within the railway, within the division. Now, it was originally meter gauge, single line sections with steam traction. Now it is broad gauge, double line, and nearly 100% electrified. The figures which I am giving you here are which were true when I joined in 2017. They have changed a bit over the time, but since I'm speaking of the time when I joined, I'm continuing with these figures. 495 route kilometers, mostly double line, but 103 kilometers was single line. I'll show it on the map. 315 curves and many of them were on meter gauge alignments. 351 level crossings. And so if you take away the station sections, it comes to something like 1 level crossing per kilometer, which is extremely high. Major bridges across Ganga, Gandak, Budi Gandak and Kosi. Exactly 100 stations, approximately 100 passenger carrying and 120 goods trains per day, more than 11,000 staff and a turnover of 900 crores. This is the map of the division, what is called a system map. As you can see, the main line is here, which runs east-west, and this is running parallel to the Ganga. Then there is this very important northward loop. Sonpur is here, by the way. Sonpur is here. This is Hajipur, and you go north, you reach Musaffarpur. You come this way, you touch Samastipur, Samastipur, which is another divisional headquarter, but falls within this line. And then here you reach Bachwara, and then you continue. Baroni is the next important point. And then you continue Khagadia, Mansi, and so on up to Katihar. Now, this portion was still a single line. It was under doubling. This portion was still a single line, which was under doubling. And most important over here, the river Kosi, we had a bridge where doubling was done, but the bridge remained single. So this was a major bottleneck in operations. And this bridge, to top it off, the bridge had a speed restriction also because of its condition. And to improve the condition, we had to impose a further speed restriction and impose blocks also. So this was a great challenge for punctuality and for through traffic. Now, as I mentioned, there were stations named after personalities. So Khudiram Bose Pusa. Khudiram Bose was a very young freedom fighter, was only 18 years old. Karpuri Gram, named after Karpuri Thakur, former chief minister of Bihar and guru of many of the present politicians. Dinkar Gram Simaria, named after Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, the national poet of India. Vidyapati Dham. Vidyapati is lesser known, but a very reputed poet in that part of the world. Then there are tiny stations with double parent names, which I find very interesting. And as I said, this is politically a very volatile area. So I know from experience about one of these, that is the first one, Bharpura Pahleja. Now Pahleja was a station located on the bank of the river Ganga when steamers were operating. Later on, when the bridge was made, we'll come to the bridge in a moment. The new Pahleja station was set up a few kilometers away at the foot of the bridge. Now,
he's giving a talk about Swanpoor division.
The people of this village, Bharpura, they protested. They said that your station is called Pahleja, but you have taken land from us. So it should be called Bharpura. And finally, this compromise was made, and the name of the station was changed to Bharpura Pahleja. And I suppose there would be a similar history for these other stations. And these are all very small stations, but they have these long names. So apart from Bharpura Pahleja, you have Basudevpur Chandel, Sahdei Buzur, Shahpur Patori, Sherpur Dhirpura, and this lovely melodious one, Nandini Lagunia. So this is one of the interesting features of Sonpur division. There are a lot of pilgrimage points, as I mentioned. Harihar Nath temple in Sonpur, Garib Nath temple in Musaffarpur, Simaria Ghat, Dinkar Gram. They have a mela which they called Kumbh Mela. I used to find it very strange, but I believe it's an established term in that part of the world. Ambika Bhavani temple, which is a Shakti Peeth located in Digwara, and there's also a halt called the Ambika Bhavani halt. Now, I'd like to explain the geography of Sonpur and its reference to Patna. As I mentioned, the river Ganga flows across the division. Patna is here south of the river. Sonpur is here north of the river. Now, once upon a time, there were only steamers to cross this. Gandhi Setu, which is here, this was this was opened in 1982. This is a pure road bridge. So the road route from Patna to Sonpur would be, you come to the far end of Patna, cross from here, and you end up beyond Hajipur. And again, you have to cross the Gandak to reach Sonpur here. This was when I joined. Very luckily for me, within a month of my joining, the JP Setu was opened. JP Setu was the picture on the left. This opened in 2017. I joined in May and JP Setu was inaugurated in June. So this was very lucky for me. Now with this JP Setu, this is a road come rail bridge. And through this, you can reach Patna in an hour, and it's a very clear route. So this was a great blessing. And I thought I must explain this layout because it's rather confusing. So north of the river, Sonpur was my divisional headquarter. Hajipur was the zonal headquarter, but it fell in Sonpur division. It was part of the division. There's no Hajipur division. It's part of Sonpur division. Initially, as I mentioned, there were these old steamers which used to operate between Mahendru Ghat in Patna and Pehleja Ghat near Sonpur. And Mahatma Gandhi Setu started in 1982. And JP Setu, the road come rail bridge, started in 2017. The travel time between Patna and Sonpur reduced to just 1 hour, which was 2 to 3 hours earlier. Now, interestingly, there are two things which I'd like to say about Sonpur. Sonpur once had the world's longest railway platform at 2,450 feet. It is still the same, but others have overtaken it. But I believe it still figures on the top 10 in the world. The railway code for Sonpur is SEE. Now, this is very interesting because there is no E in the present spelling. It is simply SONPUR. But as we proceed, we'll understand the reason why it is SEE. Now, I'd like to share some aspects of divisional working. This, I'm taking the liberty of explaining this, although I'm aware that in the audience, there are many of my respected seniors and colleagues who have not only worked as DRMs, but also as GMs. So this portion of the presentation is primarily for the non-railway friends to give them an insight of the working of divisions. Now, if you ask someone to explain the organizational chart of a zonal railway, you might get very many different kind of answers. Like the 6 blind men of Hindustan, everybody clutches a different part of the elephant and comes away with a different impression of what it is all about. So, without disputing the other charts or interpretations which others might have, let me explain what, in my view, is the best way of explaining the organizational structure. We're talking of a zonal railway. The general manager or the GM is on top. Then there is a territorial distribution on the left, and there is a functional distribution on the right. The territories which you see on the left, there is a DRM here, and there's a dotted line here showing the other DRMs. Typically, a railway would have 3 or 4 or 5 different divisions. So there are multiple DRMs reporting to a GM. At the same time, there is a functional organization. There are principal heads of department, and this may be around 15. So a GM has around 15 principal heads who deal with different functions. Now we come to the branch officer. A branch officer in a division is reporting to the DRM for territorial purposes, and that's the day-to-day administration. And he's reporting to his principal head of department for the functional purposes. So this is what is management books call it a matrix organization. And in the railways, we've had it for very, very many years. Now it looks a little difficult to work for the poor branch officer because he has to constantly try to satisfy both the DRM and the PHODs. and there may be conflicting objectives. So in case you are wondering about how the system works, let me quote Winston Churchill and what he said about democracy. He says, democracy is the worst form of government, except all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. So I would say, this is my personal view, entirely personal view, that the present railway organization is something like Churchill's definition of democracy. Now, the branches in the divisional tree, the DRM is like the trunk, and these are the various branches. They're called branch officers, literally. There's a general branch, operating branch, commercial, personal, accounts, safety, security, audit, engineering, mechanical, electrical, signal and telecom, stores, medical. There may be one or two which I've missed. But the point I'm making is that there are very many different specialized functions, and they all come together in divisional working. And it is extremely challenging because the individual who is working as DRM has got a background in only one of these. Now, I'd like to share a picture. This is from Aesop's Fables, a story which my father used to tell me as a child. It's a dog in a manger. A manger is where you keep straw or grass for feeding cattle. Now, this is a dog which has got into this manger. It can't eat the grass, but it is barking and growling and scaring away these cattle which are coming to the grass to eat it. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because sometimes rail fans have this feeling about railway officers. I'm making a general statement. I'm sure there are exceptions. But rail fans sometimes feel that the railway officers who are in charge of the railway assets are reluctant to share it or make proper use of it, or they do not appreciate the value of what they have. Now, let me explain. There are multiple stakeholders for a division. There are external stakeholders and internal stakeholders. The internal stakeholders, I would say, are railway board, zonal headquarters, departments, construction organization, employees, including officers, unions and associations, and what I call the extended railway family. Literally the families of railway people, railway employees. And then there are people like the vendors, the people who sell the chai walas at stations and so on, who are really dependent on the railways, and they live in that environment. Then the external stakeholders, the passengers, the freight customers, state government and local authorities, courts and tribunals, public representatives, that is MPs, MLAs and so on. Then there are formal consultative committees. There are contractors and suppliers. There's media, and now very important, there's social media. There are activists and there are agitators. And as I mentioned earlier, the agitators who come to the extent of stopping the trains, and even sometimes they even resort to violence. Although more often than not, the cause which they are protesting is not linked with the railways, but they find it easy to express their protest and their anguish by stopping trains, or they get a lot of visibility by this. And at the end of this list is the category of rail fans. We have a lot of respect for you, rail fans, let me tell you, but please understand that with all these considerations, if you see this picture, this person in the middle is being pulled in all different directions. A tightrope walker has to think of only two directions. But if you are working in a division, you are pulled in many different directions. There's a dynamic balance. And therefore, we may find it difficult to devote the time and attention which you deserve. The challenges for a DRM are multiple. There is a knowledge test. As I said, his background is on only one function, but he needs to know about multiple functions and how they interact. There's a learning test because new data keeps pouring in. Every day you get literally thousands of pieces of information, and you have to understand this, interpret this, and add to your knowledge bank. There's a stamina test. There's a 24/7 working. And there's a patience test because there are repeated provocations from different directions. Now, let me once again remind you, this is an entirely personal view. I would say being posted as a DRM is a lot like getting married. And why do I say that? Because number one, most people get only one chance. And you cannot learn much from others because each case is different. On the other hand, it's only for 2 years. Marriage is for a lifetime, but being a DRM is only for 2 years. So let me continue and tell you about the things which I'm not going to talk about so that we can concentrate on the things which I do want to talk about. So this presentation is not about accidents and mock drills. I've had my share of this, but it's too painful to talk about it. It's not about meetings. This is another fact of life. And meetings come under various names. You have meetings, you have Baithak, you have conferences, you have seminars, you have workshops, you have conventions. Then, I don't know, there are the Goshti, which are Goshti. There are multiple names. But finally, it's about talking. It's not about speeches. This is another thing which one has to do very often. It's not about planting trees. This is another thing which happens very often in divisions. It's not about lighting lamps. It's not about distributing prizes. It's not about retirement functions. And you must be wondering how the work gets done. Well, let me remind you, this is all work, what I'm showing you. There's Swachhata Pakwada. Here you can see me trying to operate this machine used for cleaning the platform. There is Rashtriya Ekta Divas. Here is a run in the morning, an oath in the office. Then there is a moment of pride, the Railway Week celebrations. It's a matter of pride to win a shield on behalf of the division. And these are multiple shields which we won for different functions. And this is at the divisional level. Then there is a moment of national pride, flag hoisting on Republic Day and Independence Day. A moment of national pride. It's a great honor. Then there are school functions, more pleasant aspects. Just look at the exuberance of these little kids. I'd like to say that, again, an entirely personal view, that today we talk of CSR, and there are organizations who present a few benches or even a few dustbins to the railways and call it CSR. We ourselves in the railways have been running schools for decades. We have given Vidyadhan to thousands, tens of thousands of children. I think that is true CSR. Then there are club activities, another pleasant aspect of one's work, or after hours rather, after work. Then there are training programs. I had the opportunity to visit this training program for DRMs in Bocconi School in Italy, and another one at the Railway Staff College, or Nair as it's called now, in Vadodara. And another experience which I had, the first fracture of my life, I tripped over a track and broke my arm. You can see my arm in a sling here. And this is the X-ray. It's a very fine crack which you can't see in the X-ray, but there it was. So, as I said, these are not the things which I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about something which you are all waiting for, the Sonpur Mela, the famous cattle fair of Sonpur. The wonders of Sonpur, as I showed you the map earlier, it's at the confluence of the rivers Ganga and Gandak. Every confluence of rivers, every Sangam is a holy spot in our country, and this is no exception. There is a fable is a crocodile. It is said that the elephant, Incidentally, what you see here is a mural of this fable, which is in the DRM's office. The Gaj or the elephant, which you see here, was a devotee of Lord Vishnu, and the crocodile was his enemy. So when the Gaj went to drink water in the river, this crocodile uh, took hold of its foot, and the struggle went on for a long time. And the people around used to ask "Kaun hara," meaning who lost the battle. And so this ghat is called Konhara Ghat. This is at the confluence of these two rivers. Harihar Nath temple is a very old temple which is located here. And the Sonpur Cattle Fair or Pashu Mela is actually held in the campus, in the grounds of the Harihar Nath temple. And the railways have a very important role in the Mela, which we'll just come to in a moment. The Sonpur Mela is held on the banks of the Gandak. It was started as far back as Chandragupta Maurya, which the story goes. That means 3rd century BC. Horse traders from Central Asia used to come here. Horse trading has been a way of life in this part of the world for many centuries. There were cattle, horses, elephants, wild animals, exotic birds once upon a time. Now most of these are banned. It's only cattle and horses now. There's rustic entertainment, all kinds of entertainment. The so-called theaters. The localities of the town, it's very interesting. They are named Hathi Bazaar, Gaya Bazaar, Chidiya Bazaar, etc. So throughout the year, you have a reminder of the kind of activities which take place or used to take place in various parts of the town. Life in Sonpur, it is not Life literally, it is Life magazine of the Time Life group. They came to Sonpur in 1952, and this is one of the photos they took. You can see the old bridge in the background, and this is an elephant bathing in the river. Now, the railway factor is very important in the organization of the Sonpur Mela. Let me show you a small clip of a press conference which was held shortly before the Mela.
हम लोग इसकी तैयारी कर रहे हैं सोनपुर जिले में इस प्रकार से क्राउड मैनेजमेंट किया जाएगा और यात्रियों की सुविधा का ध्यान रखा जा रहा है कि उनको यहाँ पहुँचने में और लौटने में कष्ट ना हो। इसके लिए जो कदम उठाए जा रहे हैं उसमें पहली बात तो ये है कि कुछ स्पेशल ट्रेन चलाई जाएंगी जो आसपास के स्टेशनों तक जहाँ से अधिक यात्री आते हैं वो अपने घर से सोनपुर तक पहुँच सकें और वापस सुरक्षित लौट सकें। दूसरी बात, जो भी गाड़ियां यहाँ से गुजरती हैं,
Thousands of pilgrims come to Sonpur for a holy day. So there are special trains, there are extra stoppages, longer halts, ticket counters, slowing down trains. A lot of things, a lot of activities are required from the railway side to make this Mela successful. Now, the more interesting part is that there is something called Railgram, which is a permanent railway pavilion located in the Mela ground. It's very close to the road, so it's a good place to park. And everybody who comes to the Mela has to pass in front of it. And a lot of people are tempted to come inside. There are display galleries inside, and there are stalls set up by various branches. Some of this is permanent, and some of them is set up at the time of the Mela season, which is once a month, for 1 month each year. There are ticket booking counters inside. There's a first aid booth. There are commercial stalls and eateries. Now you can see me and my wife here. We are smiling because an in-house artist has made cartoons, and we are there in some of the cartoons in a rather uncomplimentary way. But then this is part of the joke. A model railway layout, a very high quality model railway layout, and they even have this Harihar Nath Mandir located inside. And I must thank my friend Dipesh Chandra, who's a photographer and documentary filmmaker from Darbhanga. He had set up photo galleries at both Sonpur and Hajipur during my time. And most of the photos which you see in the section, in the Mela section, are taken by Dipesh. Railgram Express, this is a toy train which runs within the Mela ground. And I tried to maintain its character, with this little toy and this bright colors, but it was repainted in the LHB color scheme. You can see the train moving here. There's this little road on which it moves, and we have a semaphore signal also. But a platform was lacking. So a month before the Mela, I went there and I said, why don't we have a platform? And this suddenly, a lot of creative talents went into it. My wife said that there's a wall just behind this. So why don't we paint some murals on it? So we found some local artists, and she's standing here with these murals. This is a coolie in a red uniform. This is an RPF constable. We got a real RPF constable to pose for this, and we copied his uniform. And then these are some passengers and so on. So this is the look of the platform. You see, it's a tiny platform, but this is all real. This is all real railway stuff. It's made to the same design. You see this board. And so this is grown-up railwaymen playing train. So it was great fun making this. It took, we had very little time. It was made in less than a month, but it was a fantastic team activity. The GM special, the joke was that when I tried the train before the Mela started, it became a DRM special. And when Mr. Trivedi, the GM, came to inaugurate the Mela, this toy train became the GM special. Then let me introduce you to the magical world of Dukanji. Now, Dukanji, his real name is Mr. Tiwari. He's a performer and social activist from Prayagraj or Allahabad. Now, he performs in the Kumbh Mela and he travels a lot. And one of his specialty is that he has discovered this mooch dance. He's invented this mooch dance in which he has lighted candles, which he holds in his whiskers. And then he dances and these candles move. So this is the kind of entertainment which is very popular. And he's also an activist. And so he talks about environment and how to preserve the ecosystem. He dresses up in these fancy costumes. And here you can see him at Railgram. He's sitting on a bench. The bench is real, or what you see on the background is all painted on. He's standing with the board and he's posing with the train. We set up an open air museum along the circuit where the train moves. We discovered these old bricks at various locations. B&WR 1895, 1906, 1946. There's this classic weighbridge, 16-ton capacity, supplied to B&WR in 1883. The date is engraved here. There's this mortar mixer, also known as the Chuna Surkhi machine, used for mixing the mortar. This probably dates back to the 1880s. And as you can see, it was not electrical motor driven. There were these pulleys, which would have been driven with a belt connected to a steam engine. Now, the question which I asked earlier, where are the E's in Sonpur? This is a board which I used to see at the railway station, and I used to wonder what this alteration was. So I got it removed from its location and got it cleaned. And we discovered it was this great enamel. It was made of enamel, beautifully finished, which over the years, somebody had tried to change the spelling. The original spelling was Sonepore. The present spelling is Sonpur. But now you find the two E's here. And that explains why the code is SEE. Now, this particular board we have preserved in Railgram. It's preserved in the open. It's more than 100 years old, but it's in wonderful condition. It's absolutely smooth and every letter is in perfect condition. And there are similar signboards in some other stations also, which can be restored. Now, the rest of the Mela, we didn't really get to see much of the Mela because for security reasons, it was hard to mingle with the crowds and you can't really go around with a group of khaki-clad RPF constables. But still, if you come to my home today, you'll see these two lovely baskets. There are a lot of arts, a lot of handicrafts in that part of the world which are not so well known. Like this is Sikhi art. There is Sujani embroidery. There's Madhubani painting. And this is the artist. She's a President's Award winning artist. And she specializes in Sikhi art. So we asked her address. She didn't have a card and I was not carrying a pen. So she explained her address and this is what.
जयनगर स्टेशन पर जब जाएगा कहेगा कि हमको उसराही जाना है जब उसराही जाएगा तो कहेगा कि नाजदा खातून है सिक्की आर्ट को फौरन पहुंच जाएगा
Now that you've been to the Mela, now you must accompany me for a short visit around Sonpur division. I'm aware I'm running out of time. I promise to finish in the next 5 minutes or so. Now, there are multiple ways of traveling. There's traveling by road, by car, as you can see. There is traveling by RA or inspection carriage or saloon, as it's called popularly. This looks very attractive to people who have not had the opportunity to travel in this. But let me assure you that trying to sleep in a stationary RA is not for everyone. As a die-hard railwayman, when I travel by RA, I like to sleep in it, even if it's parked somewhere. But when it's parked somewhere, it's extremely noisy when a train passes at the station. It's extremely noisy and there are very heavy vibrations. So only a die-hard railwayman like me can sleep in a stationary RA. Then there are these self-propelled inspection cars. I had the opportunity to convert some old ones, and now, of course, the new ones also, which are being made. So this is the interior, two views of the interior, and this is a very useful thing, which has come up in the past few years, because these are not attached to a train. They are self-propelled and they can stop at any station or even mid-section when required, and they can clear out very quickly. Some of the important stations across the Gandak from Sonpur is Hajipur, where the GM's office is located. It is the district headquarters of Vaishali district. And this is the late Ramvilas Paswan, who was once Minister of Railways. And he was instrumental in setting up this headquarter office here. He used to come, at that time, he was Minister of Consumer Affairs, Union Minister. And he used to come frequently to Hajipur. This is one of the functions which we held in his honor. Musaffarpur is another important station. It's a prominent town of North Bihar, noted for trade and the Garibnath temple. It's a major junction from the railway point of view. It's a major junction with an extremely complex layout. And what rail fans would find interesting is that there's a steam loco plinth outside the station. And there is a 100-foot flag which was installed during my tenure. There's Baroni, the industrial town, with an IOC refinery, NTC power plant, and so on. This has the largest concentration of staff in the division. And Garhada, the next station from Baroni, is said to have been the largest transshipment yard in India. Which you can see here, there's this huge structure which was used for transshipment of goods from meter gauge to broad gauge. Before this, of course, as I mentioned, with reference to Jim Corbett, the transshipment was done.
You don't mind this? I can put earphone
across the river by stream.
So interested in the railways.
Atulya said I degree batch, man.
This is Mansi Junction. This is Mansi Junction, the location of a very old building. There's not much otherwise, but I love this old building. I wish I could have lived here. This was once a DN's bungalow, and it was being used as an officer's rest house. Extremely beautiful, elegant old bungalow. And one last thing, one last stop before we go home for a cup of tea. This is a very old bridge.
Second, from the right.
These pillars which you see here, these are cast iron pillars. And the date is 1868 and 1872. And it says BBCIR. I don't know how BBCIR came here, but this is in a place called Garol, next to a place called Garol, this little bridge. And this is no longer in use. If you see the support here, there's a gap between this and this. So this is the existing bridge. and these old structures are still lying below the bridge. I wanted to retrieve one of them, but it's extremely difficult. The location is inconvenient and they're very heavy. But because of this, they'll stay there forever. So if you get a chance ever to go to Sonpur division, I suggest that you go and see this bridge at Garon. It's just about 20 kilometers away from Sonpur. Then T10 is the DRN's bungalow, as you can guess. So we'll just stop here for a cup of tea. This is called T10. T1 to T9 still exist, but they are in very bad condition. They have been split up into staff quarters. T10 is the DRN's bungalow, which is well preserved. This was built in 26-27, long before the division came into existence. I know this because we were breaking a small ventilator in one of the rooms, and then we discovered bricks made in 26-27. It is located south of the station near the highway. Now, tea at T10, you can see the teacups here. I always thought of T10 as a place where you can get 10 types of tea. And I do have a variety of teas at home, then as well as now. And the interesting thing is this fireplace which you see here, the lovely brickwork which was exposed when we removed the plaster.
All photos also is showing. Live with the pot.
Life at T10, some views of me and my family at T10. And finally, ये आम बात नहीं है for overseas friends who don't understand Hindi. Let me translate. It's a pun on the word aam, which means mango, and it also means ordinary. So when I say ये आम बात नहीं है, it means this is not something ordinary. These are mangoes from the garden of the DRN's bungalow. There were 20 or 30 trees, different varieties of mango, and extremely delicious mangoes. And I've never had so many mangoes and such a variety of mangoes in my life as I had during those 2 years at Sonpur. So once again, I say, ye aam baat nahi hai, now in a different sense. It was a rare privilege as well as a great challenge for me to work as a DRM. I say this in all humility. And my sincere thanks to RES for this opportunity to share my memories. Thank you very much to the audience for your patient hearing. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Atulya. I must say we must thank you, and not that you thank RES, but we must thank you for giving us, for the second time, an excellent presentation, which I'm sure everyone would have enjoyed. What I liked about the presentation was that you had so many topics to talk about. The word tangled didn't apply to them at all. You went very smoothly from one to the next. Therefore, congratulations, very well done. Your talk wasn't tangled at all. So if anybody would like to ask any questions, please, you're welcome to do so.
Okay, Atulya, I have a question.
Yes, please.
I worked in the NE Railway headquarters for 3 years.
Yes.
1990 to 93. And when I visited Sonpur division, my wife and I wanted to go to Vaishali to see the oldest democracy, seat of oldest democracy in the world.
Yes.
But people dissuaded us so much. They said, don't go there. It is totally inhospitable. You will not even get a glass of water. So finally we didn't go. So I hope, of course, I was there 1990. So I hope now things must be different. You must have been to Vaishali and you could share some experiences.
Yes. Vaishali, there are 3 or 4 things I'd like to say about Vaishali. One thing is that it's the district headquarters where Hajipur district is located. But still, it's a very small town. There are some ruins there. There's some old stoop and some pillars and a lot of archaeological sites where excavation is still going on. There are a few places there where you can have a meal or even stay overnight. I'm not so sure about the quality of the places for staying overnight, but it's not very far from Hajipur or Sonpur. It's driving distance. And another thing is that the new line has been constructed, which was under construction when I was there. I believe it's been completed now. So there is actually a railway line connecting Hajipur and Vaishali. Vaishali had a very big and beautiful station building. But when I was working there, it was not connected. I believe now it has been connected.
Okay.
So hopefully the place will improve now.
Okay,
And,
so it is worthwhile visiting Vaishali now.
Yes, certainly. It will be certainly better than what you were told in 1990.
Okay.
And hopefully in the coming years, it will be still better.
Okay, fine.
Sir, Apurva Bahadur from Pune.
Yes, please.
See, as a rail fan, you've just set me thinking, how safe is this place? I mean, very frankly, there is no rail fan presence in this area. And I don't think of a single person who has actually put their feet on the ground, apart from you, of course. But non-railway rail fan who has visited this place and covered the beauty of this section. So the first thing we look for is it safe? Because there are thousands of pictures of Shindavane Ghat and Bhorghat because there is no law and order issue.
Yes.
So how is it to be there? I mean,
well, I can say from personal experience that I felt quite safe. But then that's not a very fair answer because I used to always used to move in a crowd with my team.
Yes.
But we did have rail fans coming there, and once there was somebody shooting a movie.
Yes.
And they were stopped by the RPF of my division.
Yes.
And then later on, it turned out that they had a permission from the CPRO, but it had not been informed to the division.
Oh.
So there are people who come, and especially at the time of the Mela.
Yes.
We have all kinds of visitors. We have pilgrims, we have tourists, we have journalists.
Okay.
We have, I believe the Mela has not been held for last 2 years because of COVID.
Yes.
But hopefully it will be there next year.
Yeah.
So it will be a good time. If you would like to visit the Mela, we can not only see the railway aspects, but get a sort of experience of various aspects of life in that part of the world.
I'll do some homework and I'll get back to you.
Yes, please.
You
are welcome. I can put you in touch with some of the people who are working.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm welcome in where you are working today also.
Oh yes, most welcome.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
I'd love to.
I recall when I was in the Northeastern Railway headquarters, Sonpur was rated as one of the most efficient divisions.
Yes.
So I presume it must be continuing to hold that position.
Sir, it has changed a lot now. As I said that just 20 or 30 years ago, it was all meter gauge, single line, steam traction. 30 years ago. Now it is broad gauge, double line, electrified traction. So in terms of infrastructure, it is similar to Danapur and Mughal south of the river. But in practice, a lot of these changes have been made in a hurry with budget constraints. There are some shortcuts which have been taken. So there are constraints like I mentioned, when doubling was done, a major bridge was left out.
Okay.
So that's one bottleneck. Electrification has been done, but not sufficient isolation arrangements have been provided. So things like this which impede free movement. But it's in terms of the infrastructure, it is close to Danapur and Mughal Sarai. In practice, it's very difficult to compete with these divisions.
The safety record used to be very good.
Safety record is still very good.
Still very good. Okay.
Still very good.
Okay.
Atulya, one question.
Yes, please.
Sushil Luthra.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, you mentioned that there's a WP print outside the DRM office.
That's right.
My question is, what preceded? Did doubling happen before the total elimination of steam, or that means this WP did it ever work on Sonpur division, or was it brought from outside?
No, it worked.
The doubling happened much before the
gauge conversion happened first.
Okay. So the WP actually worked on the broad gauge there.
Oh yes.
Oh yes. Okay. Thanks.
That was the
If I am not mistaken, there was actually an article in the Rail Enthusiast on this particular WP.
I see.
Niche.
Must be
I forgot
before
the
my
number
time,
now.
yes.
I forgot the number of the loco, but I think it
Yes.
was the locomotive outside Sonpur. About
Figures.
sometime last year, there was an article on this particular WP.
This was moved to the site by my friend Mr. R.R. Jha, who's retired now. He used to be senior team in Sonpur in the late 80s or early 90s. So he was the person who set up this.
And if I'm not mistaken, it moved from Jhaja from Jhaja shed, it moved to Sonpur. And then it was put outside there.
I'm not sure of that, where it came from. But
No, Sonpur at one time had more than a dozen WPs. So I suppose Swanpoor would have contributed a lot of WPs for exhibitions at various places. No idea.
I'm not very sure of this.
Okay.
I'll not like to guess on this.
Okay, fine.
Okay, are there any more questions or discussions or points of view or comments?
Sir, I really appreciate the way you've explained the structure in a matrix, that how a division works, because very often it goes over our head as a outsider how railway actually functions, and from GM downwards how does it go. And I really appreciate the graphical way of showing the hierarchy in a zone. That's something that I really liked about your presentation.
Okay, let me make a comment here.
Yes, sir.
In the railways, we got the divisions, the zones, and the railway board.
Yes, sir.
So my view is that despite railways being a huge organization and a very complex organization, the divisional hierarchy is working extremely well. The zonal hierarchy is also working reasonably well. But railway board is totally dysfunctional. The railway board has not been working in a cohesive manner for decades. And we have not been able to find a solution to that.
Okay.
So that is something beyond my competence to comment on.
Okay. No, after you retire, you can comment.
That's only 4 years
after you have been in the railway board.
We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this topic 4 years from now, sir.
Yeah.
I would like to mention one thing. The division on the railways and the division in the armed forces are very similar. This is the one place where all functions come together and you have one control. See, if you go below a division, then you have the mechanical branch and the electrical branch and the civil branch and so on. Similarly, in the army, when you go below a division, you have the artillery and the armor and the infantry and so on. So the division is the one place where all functions come together and you actually do the work, because you have to do it all together. You can't do it separately.
The same thing JL applies to the zonal railway. There also you have unity of command and everything converges to GM.
No, what I'm saying is that the smallest place, the first place that it comes together.
But in the railway board, you may have different members pulling in different directions. And this has been going on for decades.
But I wouldn't like to comment on that either.
Okay, I can comment on it. maybe the president RVS can comment on it.
No, he unfortunately has left. He's not there.
Oh,
now.
he has left. Achha, okay.
Hi, Atulya. Hi, hello.
Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Satish Gupta.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to check whether on Sonpur division you have any multimodal transport in terms of container depots and other means of multimodal transportation.
No. Because there is no originating traffic as such. Very little originating traffic apart from the oil refinery and occasionally maize in the season. There is
only
very
through
little
traffic.
originating traffic. It's all through traffic.
Okay. Thanks.
So slightly disconnected question. I read somewhere that the Andal yard is actually bigger than Mughal Sarai. I mean, we always think of Mughal Sarai as the largest one in India. But actually, I read it in an Indian Railway magazine, the official magazine, that Andal is actually bigger than Mughal Sarai. I just require your comments because you're from the neighboring division. So whether you would know that.
I will not be able to give this, but then I don't know the answer, but then I would like to I'd like to understand the question better. Bigger in terms of what? Bigger in terms of
Size, I guess. Yeah. Number of lines. Yeah.
One could be the area, one could be the number of lines, one could be the number
loading.
of trains,
Yeah.
the number
Yeah.
of
Yeah, no,
wagons.
size-wise, you may be right, but Mughal Sarai yard has been handling the maximum traffic
Yes.
for a long time. So therefore, Mughal Sarai has been really the nerve center of Indian Railways. If Mughal Sarai yard stops functioning, then it affects the whole of Indian Railways.
Okay, going back to the previous question, is there a loading originating in Mughal Sarai or loading originating in Andal? I mean, or are they just...
No, Mughal Sarai would have no originating loading. It's all traffic coming, it's all through traffic.
Right. Okay. Same with Andal also.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is A. Ramarao.
Yes, sir.
I used to be COM on the Eastern Railway.
Yeah, that's right.
Many
Sir.
years back.
I've read your book.
And this question of Apurva,
Yes.
I happen to work in both Andal and Mughal Sarai.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're the right person to answer.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely that comparison is being made, but Andal and Mughal Sarai are very, very different. And as far as size and number of amount of traffic, definitely Mughal Sarai takes the cake.
Okay.
It's much bigger, much higher amount of traffic, and much more difficult also operations. And whereas Andal was originating. Somebody asked us about originating traffic. Yes, at Andal we had the coal loading.
Yes.
In a number of sidings, about almost 250 odd sidings from where the coal used to come in.
Yeah.
And the marshalling yard used to deal with 1,800 wagons a day.
Wow.
For marshalling, and they would be dispatching something like 35 to 40 goods trains every day from Andal. And all these trains, or at least excepting those trains which went to the south or to the southeast, the rest of the trains would go north and they would all pass through Mughal Sarai. So Mughal Sarai was dealing with all the loading in Asansol division, all the loading in Mughal Sarai division, and Dhanbad division, and all these used to go through Mughal Sarai. So this section between Sonpur and Mughal Sarai was at that time considered the most intensive.
Yeah.
And in fact, all the initial improvement that took place for increasing line capacity were all concentrated on that section.
Yes.
For example, the first diesels ran on that section, and electrification also came first in that area.
Yeah.
So that is the difference between the two. And the answer simply is that they are different, and Andal was slightly smaller.
Right, sir.
But let me say that between Mughal Sarai and Andal were the biggest yards in the entire country.
Right. And it still remains like that, even today. Yeah.
I'm glad to be able to answer your questions.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I would like to interject here. I've just checked the records. This locomotive, which is on the pedestal outside in Sonpur, we ran an article on this locomotive in volume 5, number 2. And the title of the article was Autobiography of an Unknown Locomotive.
Okay.
JL, you are so prompt.
The history of this
JL, you are
locomotive.
so prompt in checking up your records.
I just checked up.
You are running a
While
compilation.
other people were talking, I was looking at this.
Excellent. You should run a corporation, not a magazine.
No, it only means I'm keeping good records. And my records are very brief, only 5 years till now.
Excellent.
Anyway, are there any other comments or questions?
No, it's been it's an excellent presentation. And I think it's a good idea to get people talk about their different divisions,
Then, why don't you talk about RCF?
And RCF will not be so interesting.
No, but you can. I'm sure you can make it interesting. So should I put you on next month for a talk on
भैया
RCF?
वो 1927 का बंगलो दिखा देता है आपको, वो
No,
ओल्ड
wait a
ब्रिज
minute.
दिखा देता है.
So should we have next month's talk by you on RCF?
नहीं.
Suri sir, if you want help in making a presentation and you do present, because I would love to know about RCF. So if you have material and you're not comfortable with making the presentation, I'll do it for you.
अच्छा नहीं चलो JL, then I can give you a presentation on maglev and hyperloop.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Okay.
हाँ मतलब maglev and hyperloop is really futuristic. ठीक है? So I can give you a presentation, but I'll need help how to put across the presentation. ठीक है?
Sir, I'm there. I'm available, sir.
What's your name, please?
My name is Apurva Bahadur. I'm in Pune.
I'll give you his telephone number. Then
phone number, mobile, ये भेज दीजिए. And I'll create.
Apurva, what I'll do is I'll send the masala to you in advance.
Yeah.
ठीक है? So you then take the responsibility of projecting it onto the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, but between the two things, no, sir, between Hyperloop and the maglev and RCF, I'll say, tell me about RCF. Because that is real.
Maglev and Hyperloop का मसाला मैंने इकट्ठा किया. RCF, I retired 13 years ago. I don't have the masala.
Okay, ठीक है, sir.
मतलब Atulya is still in service. So Atulya only has to pick up his phone to get the masala from Swanpoor.
Right, sir. ठीक है, sir.
After retirement, it's difficult. Okay.
I have a question for Suri sir.
Yeah.
Can I have a word with you?
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Sir, in your RCF presentation, I would like you to include a portion of the IRY 20 coaches, which were the precursor of the modern LHB coaches, which was a sort of prototype coach, you can say. RCF had a great role in the IRY 20 design. So if you could include that part also.
अच्छा चलो ठीक है. As I said ना कि I don't have the masala right now. And after retirement, it becomes difficult to collect the masala. But let me tell you, IRY 20 में only they had done the work on the shell. And
yes, sir.
Bogies में नहीं किया था. Ultimately, when you want to have a modern coach, the bogie is a very important part of it. So LHB, which has those Fiat bogies, that certainly was ultimately a much better version than to have an IRY in which you had only improved upon the shell.
So, sir, can we say that it was very similar to hybrid LHB?
You can say that. So it was a good attempt. You go through a learning curve, during the time when you didn't have LHBs. But once you had the LHBs, LHB was a superior product. So therefore, railways went in for that.
Right.
But IR20 was a completely Indian effort. Whereas
that is true.
LHB is a completely imported effort. So
right. But ultimately, LHB coach is superior. Yeah. So Indian effort is a good going over good learning curve.
Yes.
It adds to your mental muscle. It prepares you for the future. Yeah. But if finally you have a product which is better than IRY, then I think it is better to go in for that only.
But the IR20 had got a different bogie, not the ICF pattern bogie.
But still, it is not as good as the Fiat bogie.
Yes, absolutely. Right,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
And I think we can now thank Atul Sinha again for an excellent presentation and let's say the discussion it generated at the end of the talk.
Right.
Thank you very much, Atulya, and thank you everyone who had the patience to hear.
Thanks a lot, JL, for working in a missionary mode and bringing all these things together month after month.
I hope we continue.
Yeah, of course, we should.
Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. I think we can call it a day now.
Okay.
And enjoy the rest of our Sunday.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you to all the audience.